The grandfather clock in the Blackwood mansion stopped at exactly 3:17 in the morning, not because the mechanism failed, not because the power went out. Someone deliberately jammed it with a piece of red fabric, the same fabric from the dress worn by the woman whose blood was still wet on the conservatory floor. Some secrets are written in blood, and some witnesses never live to tell their stories. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately knew something was terribly wrong? That feeling when your gut screams danger, but everything around you looks perfectly normal. What would you do if you discovered your own family was hiding a deadly secret, one that could destroy everything you believed about the people you trusted most? My name is Detective Marcus Holloway, and in my 15 years investigating homicides in rural Georgia, I thought I had seen every kind of evil humanity could create. But the Blackwood case shattered everything I thought I knew about justice, family, and the price of silence. This was not just another murder. This was theater, a crime scene so perfectly staged that every detail told a story. The positioned body surrounded by white lilies, the note written in the victim's own blood, the confession that fell into our hands like a gift from the guilty. But here is what haunts me. When a confession is too convenient, when evidence is too perfect, when every piece of the puzzle fits together too neatly, that is when you should be most afraid. But what if I told you the real killer had been hiding in plain sight for 60 years? What if the truth would destroy not just one family, but everyone connected to it? What if the person I trusted most in this world was the one who taught me that some lies are worth killing for? If you are ready to uncover a conspiracy that spans 3 generations, smash that like button and let us explore the most twisted case I have ever encountered. Because what you are about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about the people closest to you. The call came in at 6:43 on a humid September morning. Mrs. Cordelia Vance, 78 years old, had been having coffee with her neighbor Vivian Blackwood every single day for 12 years. Not once had Vivian missed their morning ritual. "Detective Holloway, something is terribly wrong," Mrs. Vance said, her voice trembling through the phone. "I have been calling Vivian since 6:30. She always answers, always. I can see her house from my kitchen window, and her car is still in the driveway, but no one is coming to the door." I drove out to the Blackwood property, expecting another false alarm. In rural Georgia, elderly neighbors worry about each other, and most of these calls end with someone who overslept or forgot to charge their phone. But as I pulled up the circular gravel driveway, something felt wrong. The Blackwood estate sat on 40 acres of rolling countryside, surrounded by towering pine trees that seemed to lean in toward the house like curious spectators. The mansion itself was a sprawling antebellum structure, white columns, wraparound porches, and the kind of architectural grandeur that belonged in history books. But the front door was slightly open. Not wide open, not obviously forced, just enough to let a sliver of darkness escape from inside. Enough to make my hand move instinctively toward my weapon as I climbed the front steps. "Mrs. Blackwood," I called out, my voice echoing through what I could see of the foyer. "This is Detective Holloway with the Sheriff's Department." Silence answered me back. That is when the smell hit me first, that metallic, cloying scent that every homicide detective learns to recognize. Copper pennies mixed with something sweet and rotting, the smell of death trying to hide behind expensive perfume and fresh flowers. The blood trail started just inside the front door, dark red droplets on pristine white marble, leading deeper into the house like a grotesque path designed to guide me toward horror. Each step I took, the smell grew stronger, more overwhelming. Now, I need you to understand something about crime scenes. Most murders are chaotic, desperate affairs. Blood everywhere, furniture overturned, signs of struggle. What I found in the Blackwood mansion was the opposite of chaos. This was precision. The trail led me past family portraits with eyes that seemed to track my movement, past antique furniture that had probably witnessed generations of family secrets. Every room I passed was perfectly clean, perfectly arranged. Nothing disturbed except for those deliberate drops of blood, leading me forward like a tour guide from hell. The trail ended in the conservatory. Vivian Blackwood, 67 years old, lay among her prized orchids like she had simply decided to take a nap. Her silver hair was perfectly arranged, her hands folded peacefully across her chest. If not for the precise cut across her throat and the pool of blood beneath her head, she could have been sleeping. But someone had positioned her there, arranged her like a museum display. White lilies surrounded her body in a perfect circle, not the orchids she had been growing, These were fresh lilies, their petals still dewy, their scent overpowering in the humid air of the conservatory. Someone had brought them here specifically for this moment. Her throat had been cut with surgical precision. The wound clean and deliberate, but something about the scene felt wrong. Too careful, too theatrical. That is when I noticed the grandfather clock in the hallway behind me. Its pendulum hung motionless, its hands frozen at 3:17. Later, forensics would tell me the mechanism had been deliberately jammed with a small piece of red fabric, the same deep red as the dress Vivian Blackwood was wearing. Someone had stopped time at the exact moment they wanted us to remember. But the detail that made my blood run cold was tucked beneath one of the white lilies, a note, written in what appeared to be dried blood, in handwriting that looked shaky but determined. "The truth dies here." 4 words that would haunt me for the rest of my life. Because as I stood in that conservatory, breathing in the scent of death and lilies, I realized this was not just a murder scene. This was a message, a performance designed for an audience of one. The question was, who was meant to see it? Dr. Patricia Reeves arrived 30 minutes after I called it in, her forensics team transforming the elegant Blackwood mansion into a sterile crime scene. I had worked with Dr. Reeves for 8 years, and I had never seen her look this disturbed by what she found. "Marcus, this is not what it appears to be," she said, pulling off her latex gloves after examining the body. Time of death was approximately 3 o'clock to 3:30 in the morning. The grandfather clock was not stopped randomly. Someone wanted us to know the exact time this happened. She pointed to the wound on Vivian Blackwood's head, partially hidden beneath her silver hair. Blunt force trauma came first. Single blow with a heavy object, probably something with decorative edges based on the wound pattern. She would have been unconscious immediately, possibly dead within minutes. So the throat wound came after.
Definitely post-mortem. Very precise, almost surgical. Someone took their time with this part. And Marcus, look at her hands. Dr. Reeves lifted Vivian's arms gently. No defensive wounds, no scratches, no bruising, no skin under her fingernails. She never fought back, because she never had the chance.
I studied the scene again with this new information. A single blow to the head, quick and efficient. But then the killer had taken time to position the body, arrange the lilies, cut the throat with careful precision, and write that blood-soaked message. Dr. Reeves, how long would all this staging have taken? At least an hour, maybe 2. The blood had to be collected, the message written carefully, the flowers arranged just so. This person was not in a hurry. Now before we continue, I need you to remember this detail about the lilies. Trust me, it becomes crucial later in ways that will shock you. Write it down if you have to. White lilies arranged in a perfect circle around the victim. Because when you learn what I discovered about those specific flowers, everything about this case changes. The more I studied the conservatory, the more convinced I became that we were looking at a performance rather than a murder scene. Every element had been chosen for maximum impact. The positioning of the body suggested peace, but the throat wound screamed violence. The stopped clock demanded we notice the time, but the lilies created an atmosphere of funeral elegance. This killer had a message, and they had taken great care to make sure we understood it perfectly. But who was the intended audience? Was this elaborate staging meant for the police who would find the body, for the family members who would have to identify her, or for someone else entirely, someone who would understand the significance of every carefully placed detail? The forensics team worked methodically, photographing every angle, collecting every piece of evidence. But I could not shake the feeling that we were seeing exactly what the killer wanted us to see. Nothing more, nothing less. That is when I heard footsteps on the gravel driveway outside. Through the conservatory windows, I watched a tall man in his mid-40s approach the house. He was carrying a coffee cup, walking with the casual confidence of someone who belonged there. When he saw the police cars, he stopped abruptly, nearly dropping his cup. "Detective Holloway," he called out as he reached the front door. "That is me, and you are?" "Tobias Blackwood. Vivian is my aunt. I come by every Sunday morning to help her with the garden work. What is happening here?" I studied his face carefully. Surprise, confusion, growing concern, all the right emotions in the right order. But there was something else in his expression, something I could not quite identify. "Mr. Blackwood, I am afraid I have some very bad news about your aunt." Tobias Blackwood stood in the doorway of the conservatory, his hands trembling as he gripped a white ceramic coffee cup. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with the weathered face of someone who spent time outdoors. His clothes were work attire: jeans, flannel shirt, steel-toed boots caked with Georgia red clay. "I arrived around 6 this morning," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I come by every Sunday to help Aunt Vivian with her garden work. She has been getting frail lately, could not handle the heavy lifting anymore." I made note of the timeline. Mrs. Vance had called the police at 6:43, claiming she had been trying to reach Vivian since 6:30 for their morning coffee. If Tobias had arrived at 6 and found his aunt dead, why had he not immediately called for help? "Mr. Blackwood, I need you to step outside while we process the scene," I said. "But first, can you tell me exactly what you did when you arrived?" "I used my key to come in through the kitchen door," he said quickly, maybe too quickly. "I made coffee while I waited for Aunt Vivian to wake up. Sometimes she would oversleep, you know. I thought maybe she was just having a slow morning." The coffee cup slipped from his hands as he spoke, shattering on the conservatory floor. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot, and Tobias jumped as if he had been struck. "I am sorry," he whispered, staring at the broken pieces. "I cannot believe she is gone. This is all wrong. Everything about this scene is wrong." He looked directly at his aunt's body for the first time, and his reaction was immediate and intense. His face went pale, his breathing became rapid and shallow, and he gripped the door frame to steady himself. But something about his shock felt rehearsed, like an actor who had practiced his lines but was still getting the timing wrong. "Mr. Blackwood, did you touch anything else in the house besides making coffee?" "No, I do not think so. Well, maybe the kitchen counter, the coffee maker. I was careful not to disturb anything once I realized." He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Can you think of anyone who might have wanted to hurt your aunt?" "No, absolutely not. Aunt Vivian was beloved by everyone who knew her. She spent her whole life helping people through the family foundation. She funded scholarships, supported local charities. Who would want to hurt someone like that?" That is when he noticed the white lilies arranged around his aunt's body, and his expression changed completely. "Wait," he said, his voice sharp with confusion. "Those flowers? Aunt Vivian would never allow lilies in her conservatory. Never. She was severely allergic to them. Even being in the same room with them would make her break out in hives and have trouble breathing." This detail hit me like a physical blow. If Vivian Blackwood was allergic to lilies, then whoever killed her knew that fact intimately. This was not a random crime or a burglary gone wrong. Someone who understood her medical condition, her habits, her routines, had deliberately chosen those specific flowers. Someone who knew her well enough to use her own allergies as part of their twisted message. "Mr. Blackwood, how long have you known about your aunt's allergy?" "Since I was a child. She always warned us kids about it during family gatherings. Said lilies were beautiful but dangerous for her. She called them her pretty poison." I studied Tobias carefully as he spoke. His grief seemed genuine now, less performed than before. But the timing discrepancies were bothering me. My partner, Detective Rosa Delgado, had been conducting background checks, and she appeared at my shoulder with information that would change everything. "Detective Holloway, we need to talk," she said quietly. "I have some information about Mr. Blackwood that you need to hear." Now this is where the case takes a turn that nobody saw coming, because what Detective Delgado had discovered about Tobias Blackwood would make me question everything I thought I knew about family loyalty, financial desperation, and how far someone might go to protect their future. But if you think Tobias is our killer, you are in for a shock that will make your head spin. Hit that subscribe button because this investigation is about to expose secrets that go back 60 years, and the truth about who really killed Vivian Blackwood will shatter everything you believe about justice and family bonds. Detective Rosa Delgado pulled me aside as the forensics team continued their work in the conservatory. Her expression was grim, the kind of look that meant she had discovered something that would complicate our investigation. "Marcus, we searched the guest house where Tobias has been staying," she said quietly, "found this hidden under his mattress." She handed me an evidence bag containing a leather-bound journal. Through the plastic I could see pages covered in handwriting, some entries written in black ink, others in what looked suspiciously like dried blood. "The entries go back 6 months," Rosa continued. "Some of the things he wrote about his aunt, they are disturbing, really disturbing." I took the journal back to the station that night and read it under the harsh fluorescent lights of my office. What I found there challenged everything I thought I understood about the Blackwood family. March 15th, Aunt Vivian called today. She sounded different, scared maybe, said she needed to tell me something about our family. about things that happened before I was born. She wants me to come stay at the house for a while. I do not know what to think. March 22nd. Been here a week now. Aunt Vivian keeps talking about the truth and how it needs to come out before she dies. She has been going through old papers, old photographs. Some of them are disturbing. I am starting to understand why my father never talked about his childhood. April 3rd. Found more photographs today. God help me. I wish I had not seen them. The things that happened in this house, the things our family covered up. Aunt Vivian says she has been carrying these secrets for 60 years. She wants to go to the police, but I told her it is too late. Everyone involved is dead except her. April 18th. She will not let it go. Says she cannot die with this on her conscience. I tried to explain that revealing the truth now would destroy everything. The family name, the foundation, all the good work we have done, but she is determined. She has already contacted a journalist. May 2nd. The journalist came today. Rebecca Thorne from the Atlanta Constitution. Aunt Vivian showed her everything. The photographs, the documents, the letters. I watched from the guest house as they talked for hours. When the journalist left, she looked sick, pale as death. June 1st. Aunt Vivian collapsed today. The stress is killing her. The doctor says her heart cannot take much more. I begged her to stop talking to reporters, to let the past stay buried. She just looked at me with those sad eyes and said, "The truth dies here, Tobias. It dies with me, or it dies in the light. Those are the only choices." The entries continued through the summer, documenting Vivian Blackwood's declining health and her nephew's growing desperation. But it was the final entry, dated September 14th, the day before the murder, that made my blood run cold. September 14th. I cannot let her destroy everything. The foundation helps hundreds of children every year. The scholarship fund has sent dozens of kids to college. All of that will disappear if the truth comes out. People will only remember the darkness, not the light we have tried to create. I have made my decision. Aunt Vivian is right about one thing. The truth dies here, but not the way she thinks. Wait, hold up. This journal entry is bothering me. I set the journal down and stared at those final pages. Something about the handwriting, the tone, the level of detail felt wrong. This did not read like someone's private thoughts. This read like a confession designed to be found. Something feels off here. Anyone else getting that feeling? Because what I am about to show you changes everything we thought we knew about this case. The journal continued with detailed descriptions of how Tobias planned to stage his aunt's murder. The stopped clock at 3:17, the white lilies arranged in a circle, the surgical throat wound, even the blood-written message. Every element of the crime scene was laid out like a blueprint. But here is what made me suspicious. Real killers do not usually document their plans in such precise detail, and they certainly do not leave those plans where police can easily find them. This journal was too convenient, too detailed, too perfect. It read less like a private confession and more like a script written for an audience. What if Tobias Blackwood wanted us to find this journal? What if everything we had discovered, the staging, the symbolism, even this detailed confession, was exactly what someone wanted us to see? What if the real truth was still buried somewhere, and we were being led away from it by someone far more clever than we realized? Rebecca Thorne agreed to meet me at a roadside diner 40 miles outside Atlanta, far from the media circus that had erupted around the Blackwood case. She was younger than I had expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of sharp, intelligent eyes that suggested she had uncovered too many dark truths for someone her age. "Detective Holloway," she said, sliding into the worn vinyl booth across from me. "I have been expecting your call ever since I heard about Vivian's death."
Of you now.
She smiled grimly. When someone murders your most important source, especially one as brave as Vivian Blackwood, the investigating detective usually wants to understand what that source was trying to reveal. Rebecca had been working on a series of investigative articles about the Blackwood family's hidden history. What she had uncovered was far darker than anyone could have imagined. "Detective, what I am about to show you will explain why someone wanted Vivian Blackwood dead," she said, pulling out a manila folder. "This goes back to 1959, to something called Camp Blackwood." She slid a black and white photograph across the table. It showed a group of children standing in front of what looked like a summer camp facility. But there was something horrifying about the image. Several of the children's faces had been scratched out with what appeared to be a knife. Camp Blackwood was a summer program for underprivileged children, funded by the Blackwood Foundation. Rebecca explained quietly. According to Vivian, 7 children died that summer under what were officially listed as accidental circumstances, but the truth was far worse. She showed me another document, a handwritten letter on official letterhead. This is correspondence between Harrison Blackwood, Vivian's father, and the local sheriff in 1959. It is essentially a bribery agreement to cover up the real cause of those children's deaths. I read the letter with growing horror. Harrison Blackwood had been sexually abusing the children at the camp. When some of them threatened to tell their parents, he killed them, made it look like food poisoning. The sheriff took money to close the investigation quickly and quietly. Vivian was only 7 years old when this happened, Rebecca continued, but she witnessed everything. She spent 60 years carrying that guilt, trying to balance the scales by doing good work through the foundation, but it was eating her alive. Why did she decide to come forward now? Because she was dying. Heart problems brought on by decades of stress and guilt. She said she could not meet her maker without telling the truth about those children. Rebecca leaned forward, lowering her voice. But detective, there is something else you need to know. Something that changes everything about your investigation. She pulled out her phone, showing me the call log. Vivian called me at 2:47 on the morning she died. She was terrified, whispering into the phone. She said someone was in the house, someone who knew about the children, about the photographs, about everything. What exactly did she say? She said, "It is not him, Rebecca. It is not Tobias. It is someone else. Someone who has been watching, waiting. They know about the children. They know everything." Rebecca's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Right before the line went dead, she said those words that ended up written in blood at the crime scene. "The truth dies here." But detective, she did not sound defeated when she said it. She sounded determined, like she was making a promise, not surrendering. The diner suddenly felt too small, too exposed. If Vivian Blackwood had been killed by someone other than her nephew, then we had been chasing the wrong suspect from the beginning. And that is when I realized we had been looking at this case completely wrong. The journal, the perfect staging, the convenient confession, it was all misdirection. The real killer was not just still out there. They were watching us, manipulating our investigation, staying one step ahead, while we focused on the obvious suspect. If this is blowing your mind, drop a comment below with your theory about who the real killer is, and do not forget to share this video, because what I discovered next will make you question everything you think you know about justice, family secrets, and how far someone will go to keep the past buried. 3 days after my meeting with Rebecca Thorne, I received a package at the police station. No return address, postmarked from Atlanta. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed Vivian Blackwood as a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, standing next to a man in a sheriff's uniform. On the back, someone had written, "Sheriff William Vance, 1959, the man who helped bury the truth." The note was brief. "Detective Holloway, some secrets run deeper than family. Check the basement of the Vance property. The truth has been waiting there for 60 years. Vance, Mrs. Cordelia Vance, the elderly neighbor who had called in Vivian's disappearance, the woman who claimed to have coffee with Vivian every morning for 12 years. I drove to the Vance property that afternoon, my mind racing with possibilities. Mrs. Vance answered the door with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. "Detective Holloway, how nice to see you again. Have you made any progress on poor Vivian's case?" "Actually, Mrs. Vance, I was hoping you could help me with something. I understand your late husband was the sheriff back in 1959. The smile vanished completely. "Yes, William was sheriff for 32 years. Why do you ask?" "I am investigating some old cases that might be connected to Mrs. Blackwood's murder. Would it be possible to look through any of his old files or papers?" Her face went pale, and her eyes darted toward the back of the house. "I am afraid I do not have any of William's work papers. They would have been turned over to the department when he retired." But her nervous glances told a different story. "Mrs. Vance, I am going to need to search your property. I can get a warrant if necessary." "That will not be necessary," she said quietly. "I have been waiting for this day for a very long time." She led me through the house to a basement door I had not noticed during my first visit. The stairs creaked as we descended into darkness. Mrs. Vance flipped a switch, illuminating a finished basement that had been converted into something between a shrine and an evidence room. The walls were covered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and documents, all related to the 1959 Camp Blackwood incident. But these were not sanitized official reports. These were the real files, the ones that had been buried. Crime scene photographs showing small bodies. Autopsy reports detailing injuries consistent with sexual assault. Witness statements that had never been filed. And in the center of it all, Harrison Blackwood's actual confession letter admitting to the murders of 7 children. What I found in that basement changed everything I thought I knew about justice. For 60 years, these children had been denied the truth about their deaths. Their families never knew what really happened to them. But the biggest shock was still coming. Mrs. Vance walked to a desk in the corner and picked up another photograph. It showed a young police officer standing beside Sheriff Vance in 1959. The officer looked familiar, but I could not place him. "Deputy Marcus Holloway," she said quietly. "Your father." My world collapsed in that moment. I stared at the photograph, seeing my own eyes looking back at me from a face 40 years younger. "Your father changed his name after he left Georgia," Mrs. Vance said gently. "He could not live with what he had seen, what he had helped cover up, but he never forgot." I found my father at his cabin in the North Georgia mountains, the same place he had been recovering from his heart attack for the past 6 months. He was sitting on the front porch, rocking slowly in an old wooden chair, staring out at the pine trees as if he could see something the rest of us could not. "Hello, Marcus," he said without turning around. "I wondered when you would figure it out." I stood at the bottom of the porch steps, my handcuffs heavy on my belt. "Dad, we need to talk." "I suppose we do." He finally looked at me, and I was shocked by how much he had aged. The man I remembered as strong and vital now looked frail, haunted. "You found Mrs. Vance's basement, did you not? Why did you not tell me? All these years, why did you not tell me what really happened in 1959? He was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the creaking of his rocking chair. "Because I was ashamed. Because I was a coward who let 7 children die for money. Because I thought if I changed my name, moved away, started over, maybe I could forget." "But you did not forget." "No. I never forgot their faces. 7 children. Marcus. The youngest was 8 years old. Timothy, Sarah, Michael, Jennifer, David, Lisa, and Angela. And I helped bury the truth, because Harrison Blackwood offered me more money than I had ever seen." I climbed the porch steps slowly. So when Vivian decided to go public, I could not let her destroy everything I had built. My new life, your career, your reputation. If the truth came out, if people knew that Deputy Marcus Holloway had helped cover up child murders, it would destroy you too. "So you killed her?" He nodded slowly. "I made it quick. She did not suffer, and I staged it to look like someone else did it. Someone obsessed with the family history. I even wrote that journal, planted it where you would find it, made it look like Tobias was planning to kill her. The stopped clock, the lilies, the note written in blood, all of it was theater. All of it was necessary. I could not let those children's deaths be for nothing." I pulled out my handcuffs, my hands shaking. "Marcus Holloway Sr., you are under arrest for the murder of Vivian Blackwood and conspiracy to cover up the murders of 7 children. As I read him his rights, I thought about the weight of generational secrets, about how one man's cowardice had echoed through decades, but I also thought about justice finally being served after 60 years of silence. "Dad, those children deserve to have their stories told." "I know," he whispered. "Timothy, Sarah, Michael, Jennifer, David, Lisa, and Angela. I have been carrying their names for 60 years. Sometimes the people we trust most are carrying the heaviest secrets. These children's stories needed to be told, their lives needed to be remembered, and their deaths needed to be acknowledged. If this case shows us anything, it is that the truth always finds a way." What is a family secret that shocked you? Share in the comments, like this video if it kept you on the edge of your seat, and subscribe for more cases that will make you question everything you think you know about justice. The red clay of Georgia holds many secrets, but some secrets once unearthed refuse to be buried again. Today, 7 children have a memorial stone in the town cemetery with their names carved in granite, and somewhere in the Blackwood mansion, a grandfather clock ticks forward once again, marking time for the living and the dead. The truth died where it needed to be born.